Hello and welcome to Springboard, your virtual university. My name is Albert Okran. Springboard is your most inspirational show and that place where the greatest minds in the world converge. Springboard is brought to you by the Springboard Roadshow Foundation and proudly sponsored by MTN Pulse and the Enterprise Group with media support from the Multimedia Group and the Graphic Business. Today we come back into the engine room with a woman I call a dreamer and a doer. He wears several different hats as a campaigner, as a strategist, as an entrepreneur, a coach, and a queen mother. Of course, and an agribusiness consultant. So she's a CEO of African Brand Warrior, recently voted the CEO of the year. But who exactly is Fatima Alimohamed? Fatima, welcome to Springboard.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.
And congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you.
I'm sure having received so many awards, this particular one had a special place for you.
It did, obviously. I mean, this is my first, I would just say, award in Ghana from an executive level. I have received quite a few in the FMCG space and stuff like that. But most of my awards have always been international. But this was special in the sense that I was put in comparison to other CEOs in Ghana that I look up to, homegrown, and obviously majority of them are running multinationals. And here I am, just this little person, so to be on that kind of platform meant something, that I'm on the right trajectory.
Your story is of great interest to not just myself, but also our viewers and listeners as well. And there are several components we'd like to explore. But let's start with, where did it all begin? Did you always dream about being an entrepreneur?
I'm not a dreamer, so that's the first thing. I don't dream, I just do things.
All right.
Secondly, I just go with the flow. So if anybody asked me, did I ever have a plan? I never had a plan. I came back, as you're aware, I'm from Kenya, I'm a Kenyan. And studying in the UK, I came back home and obviously had a ready job. Got into it, got thrown into the advertising field, and you move along. You're getting a salary, and as you go along, you meet different people, and one thing moves to the other. Moved into the corporate world from there, and then before I knew it, I continued to be in corporate. And then one day, I just woke up, because you reach a point where obviously life and things that happen around you make you want to question things that may not sit well with you as an individual, morally, or in terms of your character. And I just decided. But interestingly, saying that, in 2015 I was interviewed for a magazine, and I came across that magazine a couple of months ago when I went back home. And in that interview I said two things. One was that I was going to, in fact three things I said. One was I was going to set up my own company many years down the line. I don't know where, but it's definitely not going to be in Kenya. Secondly, I said I was going to win a UN award. And third, I said I was going to work with Forbes companies. And obviously, and I said I was going to be a queen. So I came to Ghana, and this is things that were written. I spoke of, not knowing that it was going to come to manifest. I came to Ghana. Obviously didn't become the Queen of England, but I became the Queen in two stooled areas. And then the recent award was actually sponsored by the Spanish Embassy and the United Nations. So that's got me closer to the UN award that I was thinking of. And here I am, running my own organization. And my first client was actually a Forbes company, because it was McDonald's, and I was approached to do something for South Africa. So those tick boxes have been done. But again, I just do what I need to do. I get called, I get pulled into things, and I think biggest trait is I never say no to anything. I just go, and even if I don't know how to do it, I will learn and do it.
As a leader, what values do you hold dear?
Integrity.
Apart from not saying no to opportunity.
Integrity. For me, integrity is crucial. And I think that also probably led why I had to quit working for a corporate and moving into doing something of your own. So integrity obviously sits above everything else. And the second is passion. You've got to love what you do. It's not about doing what you love, but actually loving what you do. And I love what I do. And whether it's a hat of working with young women and youth, or working with hubs, or going and speaking at engagements, or putting my heads on in terms of doing strategy, or fighting for any policies or advocacy, I go in, with no fear.
So it will be integrity and passion.
Those are the two things.
If I rank the two, which one would you?
Integrity. I mean, you can't do anything without your spine being straight and knowing that no matter what gets thrown at you, you're not going to sway. You're going to go in.
I read a survey of 500 of the top leaders in businesses across the world choosing their preferred value. Interestingly, integrity stood out as number one.
It is. I think because everyone's trying to do something, but because the world has become such a place where everything has to be a shortcut, and everybody is trying to achieve whatever they need to achieve. I mean, I think if we look at the situation today, if we look at the two wars that are happening, integrity is the reason that it's taking place, because even the people, the bodies that are supposed to be running, the world, they have no integrity to choose which side to support and which not. So if integrity is never in place, nothing works.
What would you call the biggest turning points in your life as a person?
When I had a brain stroke.
Tell me about it. Sorry about it.
Yeah. Oh, no, I'm not sorry about it. Everything happens for a reason. I was going through various things in life personally. My father was terminally ill. I remember traveling with him. I was told he had only 3 months to live. I had just found out. At the time I was finding that out, I didn't realize I was pregnant. I had only been married like 4 months or 5 months. So I got pregnant immediately after 2 or 3 months. But at that time when I was traveling with him, I didn't even know I was pregnant. All I just knew was feeling sick and everything. Came back home now knowing that I have a parent that I'm being told will only have 3 months to live. At the same time, my ex-husband decided that I need to abort the child because it was too soon to be having a baby. And then, when you're in a corporate environment, you have stress and everything. So you take your personal stuff, you just carry it on your back, and you go to work to try and do whatever you can do, because it's very difficult being a woman, having a child, and then having to come in with excuses, as it's seen that, oh my God, I've got a sick father, or my child is going to be alone. I need to manage. So, I'm sorry, I can't travel because I've got to leave the baby alone. I never allowed any of those things to come in as an excuse, nothing. But obviously it takes a toll at one point, and then my body just gave in and I had a brain infarct. But interestingly, I was in hospital, I think, for 2 weeks. And as soon as I got out, I think I got out on a Friday. I was back at work on Monday, even though I wasn't able to fully use my left side of the body. But I was back at work only because I didn't want anyone to have a point a finger or have, a say to say that she's not able to, and now she's got all these other challenges and whatever. So I've never given anybody that opportunity. And I think that's what made me hard, made me have a thick skin. And also, as much as we say, I'm not a feminist in the sense that feminism right now is being seen more about men bashing, but I support women because I am one. I understand the challenges, but at the same time, it is only fair to say that as a woman, there are certain things that people feel will make you softer and make you a target, for not being given a seat at the table. So I'm the kind of person, don't give me a seat at the table, I'll create my own table.
In all these, from the turning point and from the opportunities that you have seized, what was the biggest takeout or the biggest lesson that you've carried out that has guided you?
Just all of us have challenges. Everybody has problems, whether it's personal, professional, whatever. But you can't let that weigh you down. You can't let that hold you down. I mean, at the end of the day, I have a 21-year-old daughter in university studying overseas. I've got to make sure she goes through it, right? She's my responsibility. I've got rent to pay. I've got salaries to pay. So you've got to keep going. I think we've reached a situation where everyone, and it's not intentional, but everyone is moaning and crying about lack of everything. But we don't realize how grateful we should be to be able to know that there's a lot of other things that, happen by default. So it's just the strive to say, get up and go and just do what you need to do.
Have you ever faced rejection?
In fact, it was very interesting. And this is the only time I really felt very disappointed. Was at some point last year I was supposed to be taken on a project. I work with various organizations that I get pulled in. For the first time, the person came to me and said, Fatima, you were not selected to be a mentor on this program because they're looking for an African. And I said, sorry, what do you mean? I'm an African. And he said, no, what I meant is they're looking for a black person. I was taken aback because I have never seen myself anything else than being an African. And it really bothered me. It disturbed me to the point I was like, look at all the stuff that I do for my people, whether it's building schools or whatever. I've had to cross seas to come into Ghana to be stooled as a Queen Mother to help people because that's what God has destined me to be. So why am I being judged for? And it's never happened to me in my entire career to be told that, I was not picked for something because of my skin color.
You're not black enough.
And
from
it
the
really,
perspective of
yes, and it really, that was the first time that I was very down. I actually had to go in for therapy because it made me question, why am I doing what I'm doing? Is it really worth it? And then I just realized this probably might have just been one person's opinion. It may not necessarily have to be. And I did confront the organization thereafter. And they told me, Fatima, we don't recall having this kind of conversation, but if it did happen, then, we apologize. But it made me really question a lot of things about myself and what I do.
What did you take out of it?
I continue doing what I have to do, and I will let the naysayers say, because at the end of the day, you can heckle, you can say whatever, but if you're not making a difference, you're not impacting people, you're not bending down and lifting people up. That is between you and your God. I will continue to do what I do.
Let me ask about recognition and awards. The awards will come from external bodies, from people who validate your work. But for you, what are the proudest moments?
To be honest, I don't think
fulfilling?
I've reached there. People keep thinking, I try to tell people having an award and all that, it humbles me. Yes, with all due respect. I believe there are other people that are doing greater stuff than I. They just probably haven't been seen. They've not been recognized. Maybe they're not good at putting themselves out there. I'm a social media person, so I put everything that I do. I have no skeletons in the cupboard, and I put it out there because I always believe that that's how you inspire somebody else to actually go out there and do what they need to do. So there are definitely people who are doing better than I am, honestly, who deserve a lot more. They probably haven't been given the limelight. But that being said, I'm still waiting for something. I don't know what it is, where I really can say that, this really has recognized what I have stood for and everything else. If there's one thing that I feel great about is when my daughter turned 21 a couple of months ago. And I think for 2-3 days, it really affected me. And then I realized for the first time that I never knew how I was going to take her through school. I never knew how I was going to get her through uni, but I did it. And I created a human being, and I created an adult, and she's in her final year. So I think for me, that is my moment of success. My moment of success is knowing that I've been able to be there for my parents until the time my father died, and taken care of all his medical bills, and, not made sure that he's never had to spend a penny of his own. And I do that with my mother, and obviously I have my siblings. So for me, that is success. I don't own a house in my name. I don't own a car in my name. I don't own any things that people define as your measure of success. I don't, because that's not, where am I taking any of that stuff?
I find that people who have done significant stuff in the corporate world cite parenting as their most fulfilling accomplishment. And watching you, I saw the light in your eyes for the first time. Yeah, I know. I saw, the light just came on. And it humbles me when I see that, because there's some authenticity about what they are saying. It's not made up. Yeah. Help me to appreciate it.
I'm a very family-oriented person. My world revolves around family and friends. And when I say friends, friends who are like family. I don't take those things very lightly. And we all have a purpose on this earth, right? And we have to also appreciate that we have an ancestral lineage that we owe, a lot to. I am what I am today because of my parents. And that is not something that I can run away from. I always say, even for me sitting here, my mother's prayers have reached here before I have. And I say that for everything that I do. And having to be given the opportunity to raise a human being, children only come through you. They don't belong to you. right? Not everybody has been gifted to have a child. And then there are those who have been gifted to have a child, but they cannot be a parent. So there's one thing about being a mother, father, but being a parent is a totally different ballgame altogether. So to be given the custody by God to be able to raise a human being with the right morals, the right values, in a world that is very cruel, that a world that is all about illusions, a world that is all about money and greed, right? It's about overcoming one and the other. I think the role a parent plays is very, very significant, and it's the closest role you can play to God.
I've heard you mention God 5 times. How big is faith in your mental construct? How big is faith for you?
I'm actually a Hajia. I've been to Hajj, but I don't say it openly because I don't think I live the life as piously as one is. I mean, we're all sinners in our different ways. I do hope that someday I will get to that point where, you know, whether we're in the hijab or whatever else. But I believe in God, regardless of what religion it is. I believe you've got to believe in something that is greater than you, whether it's an energy, whatever else it is that has put you on this earth for a purpose and has the right to take you back. So I'm not religious, I'm spiritual. I do believe in God, and I believe in everything that I do, whether good or bad, that I go through in my journey. It is written by God.
This is Springboard, your virtual investing. My guest, Fatima Alimohamed. She's been voted recently as CEO of the Year. She has a number of interests that I'm trying to unpack in the engine room today, trying to find out her trials, her triumphs, the things that keep her alive. And I've been telling her so far that the lights came on best when she spoke about her daughter, and it was just beautiful to behold. Fatima, so when you wake up in the morning, what's on your mind? When you wake up in the morning, what's the thing that occupies you most when you wake up?
The first thing I don't go to my phone. I've learned to say, the first thing I've got to say is, thank you, God, that I've woken up, because human beings are just interesting characters. You know, we set an alarm on our phone thinking that it is the alarm that's going to wake us up. So we put so much more faith on that than in God. So the first thing I do is obviously say, thank you, God. And then I have this thing where I sort of have an affirmation to say, I'm going to have an amazing day. I'm going to make a difference for myself, and I'm going to make a difference for the people around me. And that gets me started for the day. And then I'm up and about, but I don't have then a plan. I go with the flow. Whatever comes for the day, so be it.
For somebody who is very steeped in strategy, I'm struggling to reconcile this statement you've made twice, that I don't have a plan, I go with the flow. Please explain it to me.
There is no, even a strategy. People think that having a strategy means that you've got to put all your ducks in a row and all that. But then that means you're being very calculated in terms of what it is you want to do. Strategy is supposed to be very fluid, right? Now, I work in the space of business and marketing strategy. And a lot of times you will see when you're talking to organizations or companies with brands or whatever, they have a focused approach to what is it that they want people to feel for the brand, you know, how they must resonate with it, keeping out every emotional aspect, every psychographic aspect of the end user, the consumer. So we go and we plan and we say, okay, the person's age is this is what income level, blah, blah, blah. But all that's changed. I mean, you can have a person having a corporate job, but at the same time, they also have a hustle. Now, if you're going to come in as the National Bureau of Statistics, you're going to come, who's the head of the house? How much is your income? What is your age bracket? But that is not true anymore, because the person also has a side job. The person probably also has a fixed deposit. The probability the person is earning something else. So we're not taking all that into account. So when you're creating a strategy, you're creating it based on the limited view you have of this person. Secondly, you talk about the kind of knowledge that people have. We again want to go based on people's degrees or, you know, X, Y, Z. What you're doing, the Open University, is that, isn't it? It's about opening up minds.
Yeah.
There's a difference between being educated and being knowledgeable. They're two different things. It's like I say, there's a difference between seeing and observing. There's a difference between listening and hearing. So that's why I say I don't conform. I do not fall within. There's a thing. A gentleman called Mr. Allah who worked. He's an Egyptian And through Strands of Pearls in Ghana, I have been running this, and they do it every year, and it's called True Colors. And when I ran into that program, I quit my job after a couple of days in that. And the reason I set in with it's an exercise that they do, and they get you to pick based on colors. So there are 4 colors they run, and I turned out to be an orange. And orange people, apparently, we're so few in the world. We don't conform to structure. And one of them happened to be Obama. So I was like, yeah, okay, this is excellent. Because we're not the kind of people, and now I understand it better, because I'm not the kind of person I want to go into a job and be told, do this, and it's got to be done by this time. I don't work like that. I've got to be sparked. I've got to feel what it is I want to do. So for me, strategy is how have I impacted the person that I intend to get whatever it is I want to get out of. And more so now, I think for me, anything that I work with right now, I'm not interested with working with brands, organizations that are not going to take the hard challenges and the tough questions. Because if you see on the continent, no brand wants to associate itself with gender-based violence. Nobody wants to talk about alcoholism. Nobody wants to talk about rape. Nobody wants to talk about police brutality. Then what really are you doing for the people, right? You have to be able to take a stand on something. So I focus now a lot more on the social cause marketing, and my strategy works on that, because I've been gifted. I tell people that after the brain stroke, I think my brain got wired and something happened. And I feel very blessed that I'm able to see very far, way beyond what others do.
The biggest question I'd like to ask you is the power of understanding yourself and how that defines your pathway in life.
It's crucial, because
help me understand it.
When you use that word, authenticity, everything comes from the space of authenticity, and that's where integrity also comes into play, isn't it? Only when you're authentic to yourself, to what you do, to what you're trying to drive, can everything else that emanates from you be authentic in itself. So I know myself very well. I know my good, I know my bad, I know when I'm being manipulative, I know when I'm being dishonest with myself or whatever. I know my fears, I know my greatness. But what I do is everything has to come from a space of compassion. It has to come from a space of compassion in whatever I do, whether it's dealing with staff, whether it's dealing, if I tell you right now, today I drove myself here. And the only reason I have done that is because my driver for the last 3 months has been having a challenge because his mother's been in hospital. So I noticed he was taking his salary in advance. So I was like, why are you doing that? And he said, oh, madam, da. So I asked him, because I just moved recently from where I used to stay. And I said, where is it easier for you to come to, for you not to use too much fuel? Is it at the old house or the current? Because I still have, my business partner living at the old house. And he said, madam, it's actually easier for me to go to the old house. So I said, you know what, from today, I don't need you to drive me. I'll continue to pay your salary, but you go to the old house and, you drive, because I need to think about what is the pain that he has. And strategy is always about understanding the pain point. What is troubling you? And that's how I come in with a solution for it. This is just a simple thing that I look. So it comes from a space of compassion. And when you understand yourself, and that means you're being compassionate with yourself, you look at the world also with the eyes of compassion.
In the selection of the components of emotional intelligence that has been highlighted as one of the key things a leader must have, in there is empathy.
Yeah.
And I connect empathy to the point you just made about compassion. They literally are cousins with the same name.
Absolutely.
Different names, but the same thing.
It's got to come from within. And I know I did a recent assessment of myself, and I came out to be an empath. We have challenges as empaths because people take advantage of empaths. But the beauty about that is we are the kind of people, you can do whatever it is. You can hurt us as many times as you want. We will still want to look in for the good. But at one point, obviously, we do reach a certain threshold, and then we'll just show you the door and tell you which way to go. But I think the world needs empathy, and we need to put ourselves in people's shoes. And like you rightly said, EQ has been always the biggest thing, but now we're seeing SQ playing a bigger role, because when human thinks, they have become God. then they want to take everything else, and greed and all, and then compassion just doesn't exist. So SQ is now becoming a big player.
This is Springboard, your virtual university. My guest today, the CEO of the African Brand Warrior, Fatima Alimohamed, recently voted as CEO of the Year, helping us to understand the values, the foundations, the principles of her life. Let's go for a break. When we come back, let me find out, what does she do as African Brand Warrior, the firm, the business, the entity? What do they do? And what are her interests in the corporate world? Also find out, in terms of strategy, what should we be doing differently if we want to rise up and shine in a very turbulent world? Springboard is brought to you by the Springboard Ratio Foundation and proudly sponsored by MTN Pulse, the Enterprise Group, with media support from the Multimedia Group and the Graphic Business. Please don't go away.
Pascal is showing his boss the efficient new technology they've installed. She is pleased, but now she's asking, why is that still there? Pascal explains that he hired a security goat to protect the data shed. The boss is not so pleased anymore. If you haven't upgraded to cloud storage yet, it's time to get business done better with MTN Business.
Well, now that we're all here, I want to start by saying what a difficult year it has been for all of us. But then there's also a lot to be grateful for. You know, like when I bumped my car into a taxi right at our junction, and the insurance company paid my claims the very same day.
And remember the surprise cash bonus we received for our funeral finance plan? That is what sponsored our trip to the beach.
And the song we sang all the way to Pram Pram. I'm also grateful that every passing year brings me closer to enjoying the retirement benefits I have contributed so much to. And how since I started working from home after the COVID pandemic, I've been taking better care of myself. Even my doctor can attest to that.
Speaking of that, I'm very grateful to the team at Transitions for giving Grandpa a befitting send-off.
Well, on a happier note, I am grateful to have found an affordable office space to rent at Advantage Place.
Enterprise, your advantage.
Welcome back to Springboard Virtual University. My name is Albert Okran, and I have the privilege today of hanging out with Fatima Alimohamed, CEO of Africa, founder and CEO of African Brand Warrior, recently voted as CEO of the Year, trying to unpack the story of her life, learnings, her values, and her outlook on life. Very, very interesting conversation so far. Brought to you by the Springboard Ratio Foundation and proudly sponsored by MTN Pulse, the Enterprise Group, with media support from the Multimedia Group and the Graphic Business. On Tuesday, find the story in full page in the Graphic Business and learn the useful lessons that Fatima is sharing with us openly, telling a very beautiful story. Fatima, why African Brand Warrior? I like the name Warrior.
I know, really, it's interesting. Like I said, you know, I just one day woke up. There were certain things that I was not comfortable with on the corporate side, and I had to make a decision. I was also beginning to feel that when you wake up and you're not happy to go to work, then that is a problem. Then that means there's something just not sitting right with you. I resigned, and sometimes I think, what a mistake, because you have a set income at the end of the month. It's very different when you go on your own. And I sat there and I was toying around, and I said, you know what? I have built #1 brands across the world. I don't know how much you know of why I even came to Ghana. I came here to set up Frytol. So Frytol is my baby. I take full credit for it. I moved here to take it over from Unilever. I did the whole rebranding. You know, initially when we came, it was an oil that looked like brake fluid, dark brown. It was selling in white jerry cans. I came and changed the whole thing. And I did that single-handedly. So let the organization not say there was a team or anything. I ran that on my own. And then later we had teams coming on board. And it came again from that space. I went to first understand what was happening in the market. And I realized that Ghanaians as men love to cook more. For women, it is the norm. But men have a thing about cooking and, carrying themselves in that way. So my first advert was actually of a man cooking. I broke the stereotypeness of women, number one. Number two, I remember at the time, what was also important was, I remember at the time asking the previous brand owners, why the name Frytol? And they're like, it's just a name. Now, you do not create brands without having a reason for the name and whatever. So I went into the market, started seeing, and I saw people were using it for making fish, frying plantain, chicken, you name it, everything was being fried in it, including shito, as they were making it. So I said, okay, Frytol. And then I was like, fry it all. That's exactly what it is. And before we knew it, it took off. It worked amazingly well. By the time I was leaving, having worked with the brand, was 80% market share. And then I just sat and I said, okay, I need to do something on my own, because I think if I have that caliber, you're only being paid for what you are doing as an employee, but you can do so much more in helping other brands. Warrior came in, obviously coming in from Kenya, where the land of the Maasai. You can see my red hair. It represents, the battlefield, but not for bloodshed, but, that's the representation. It's a color of passion for what I do. African, because that's who I am, and brand, that's what I do. And I realized more so in West Africa, unlike East Africa, is that West Africa depends on imports a lot. And we're mentally set up to think that the further away something comes from, the better it is, So bring it in from China, or bring it from Australia, bring it from wherever, but we do not love our own brands. Having then gone into it, I realized that the issue was not that we don't love our own brands, is because when we're producing for ourselves, we take a shortcut and we try to give ourselves the lowest of look, image, feel. But when we're exporting it to America, even basics like shea butter, we make sure, gold foiled packaging, proper names, the kind of quality and the scents we put in. But when we're selling to our own, we don't do that. So that's where I felt there's an opportunity now to deal with not just corporates, mainly SMEs. And I'm now working with a lot of SMEs, obviously with different projects, and trying to take it from that angle, that how can I help them to be able to better their brands and what they're trying to sell locally and internationally. So one of the areas that I'm now intentionally focusing on, and obviously it's because of the different projects I work with different hubs, is more in the area of the SMEs, the startups, because I feel there's just a lot more potential there. The problem is they don't know how to do it. Nobody's able to, everybody comes in with a huge fee and tell you that we can do X, Y, Z. So I want to be able to do practical things and show people in a practical way how they can be able to make that difference. So I've been pulled in for a lot of projects. I mean, there was another one we did in Senegal with a friend, Anatu, and helping women in the cosmetic industry and literally going to places where people haven't gone and showcasing what is it that they can do, what are the ingredients that they have in their markets that are unique, and how can we take that and leverage.
I had the privilege of traveling to Morocco and interacting with the women who were doing cosmetics, argan oil, and looking at the global size of the market. I
huge.
was literally shocked at what they were doing as cooperatives and the market share that they had in the global market for argan oil.
But it's interesting. Argan oil is only, it's probably 5-6 years old. You know how the cosmetic industry works. It's all based on trends. So all of a sudden it's this oil, then the next minute it's shea. And the first world X all surprised, oh my God, this is such a great thing. Hello, we've been having it in the continent.
I know.
Like now the biggest thing is moringa. And I'm like, are you kidding me? I knew about moringa since I was a kid. So it's interesting how they find things as they go and they get discovered. But we've had this. And that's where we need to capitalize on
exactly the point I was going to come to. So how do we build a bridge between what we have that is so good and that point where the world wakes up to say, this is it. How do we intentionally
That's
create
where
that,
I come in.
that aha moment?
That aha moment is, for example, the biggest challenge I think we have as a continent is that we always look at, I know we say African problems, African solutions, but when you know that you're going to be dealing with international markets, or even say, I mean, I always am a firm believer, first sell to the 1.4 billion people on the continent before you go and sell it out. Now, the question then comes in, do we understand global trends and global impacts and the challenges that are happening and what is happening on that front and how it impacts us? Because today, I mean, again, with you being an open university, the kind of knowledge, I mean, digital media, social media is exposing so much to the youth. And one thing we need to move away from, I mean, I'm 50. And I keep saying, I never thought at one point I'm going to say, I'm one of those people that I thought at a younger age they're old. But the people we should be investing in are the youth, the younger generation, because we have certain set ways. We have defined what we can do and what we're okay with. The younger generation has so much going for them because they can try 5 different hustles. And if, let's say, out of that 3 fail, 2 will at least work, right? At my age, your age, we're not willing to try something new because if we lose those funds, we lose it, and trying to catch up and get it back becomes difficult. That being said, how does the international trends play a role? So if we know now the first world is actually being driven by the youth are deciding, what they're okay with, what they're not. Like, the current war that is going on, you're seeing it's actually the younger generation that is going out. And in the past years, everybody's been quiet, but the current generation is going and speaking up, and they're taking matters in their hand. If you look at what was happening in terms of the African continent, what happened with Niger and all that, you're seeing it's a younger generation that is driving the agenda. How does that impact us? What does it mean? The younger generation wants organic stuff. The younger generation wants things that are authentic. The Afrocentric people are trying to tie in with, aspects of being African. If you look at Ghana, for example, look at Nigeria, look at what's happening in Kenya, we're finding that the younger generation prefers to use their local names now. They don't want to use English names. They want to be seen with their natural hair. Everybody's got, a look in terms of wearing their kente or African print. So we've become so Africanized. But the question then comes in, are we then also willing to patronize African brands? So we've done some part. Now we need to move to the next level and say, okay, how can we drive this? Because you find the patronage more when you're in the UK or the US. Oh my, this is my product from Ghana. I love to use it. But you find it better when you're away from home than when we're at home because we take it for granted.
What should we do to drive that local demand for what we have? Is it packaging? Is it
one's obviously
presentation?
government
Is it
policy.
communication? Okay.
Government policy is crucial, but at the same time, government has to be an enabler, right? So there's one thing about saying putting policy, but also ensure that, we're able, do we have the infrastructure? Because that's one of the biggest challenges we have. How are you able to move something, let's say from Tamale all the way to here? How can we move something from Bolgatanga here without having to worry about the roads, worry about the cost of fuel? All these things play a huge role, and we're not competitive on that front. And today, a Ghanaian is in a situation where to have 1 meal a day is now a privilege. I mean, look at the cost of wache, just simple things.
It?
I mean, that's what everyone have. I mean, I'm more of a fan of groundnut soup more than anything else. But when you look at it, even now when I came to Ghana, it's the first time I got introduced to Kofi Brookman. And that is one thing I can eat every day going. Now I understand why it was called Kofi Brookman, but now it's no longer for the
It's no longer for the broke.
Yeah, that's it. So policies really are crucial in driving the agenda.
Let's talk about agribusiness. You have significant footprints in that space.
By default.
Tell me about how you got in there and what prospects there are for the young.
I mean, obviously, I was working for Wilma Africa, the Fritol brand, and in that area, the palm plantation in Ghana was part of the area. So we had to have a representative at the Association of Ghana Industries at the time. And I ended up being the person in this. So before I knew it, I got pulled into that. I sit on the cotton board of Ghana, on the Shea part. I was on the Shea Alliance at the time. So I got involved in a lot of it. So it's by default, I'm not a farmer. But again, I said it's all about strategy. It's about understanding markets. It's about understanding consumption. So one thing that I take pride in and credit for is that I come in with very simplistic solutions to things, because you've got to look at things from that perspective. I mean, how is it that we are a continent and still having people living under $1 a day, and we have hunger as one of our biggest challenges? I mean, when we talk about the recent Ukraine Russia war, we were so dependent on flour coming in from outside, yet we grow cassava here, we grow millet here. I mean, it's yam, and you can produce flour from each one of these things. So if there's anything that we should have learned during the COVID period, is that all our solutions are within the border. They're not outside. I mean, we thought the world was shutting down. We're not going to, I mean, during COVID, 1 kg of onions was more expensive than 1 liter of fuel, you know, which is a crime. Yet onions is what we have to consume and eat every single day in everything. So did we learn from it? Have we decided to invest more in agriculture? Do we do dehydrated foods? What is it that we're doing to make sure that we're food secure if we were ever put into a situation again? Which will happen, because I'm sure one of the things you guys at the university might have been reading or have been looking into, and I'm sure with yourself, especially the 15-minute cities. 15-minute cities is what is going to make all of us prisoners within a 15-minute confinement. What does that mean? What are we doing to be able to make sure that we're not controlled, you know, by cameras and controlled in terms of movements? We're talking about the world moving away from cash to digital. What does that mean for us in Africa? We are people who like to go to the open air market here, take 2 CDs, 5 CDs. How does that work? What does that mean? So we're getting so excited about innovation and new ideas, but we don't understand the implication it means in terms of us being controlled. So there's another conversation that has to be had in that space, and also specifically with the agric, when you talk about digital, and this is a question that I asked on a recent panel, because it was all about how digitalization is excellent for agric, and I'm like, really, is it? Who holds this information? Where is it sitting? Who's the custodian of this information? It's not, none of us. None of us. It's sitting with somebody who then looks at the data, mines it, and says, because I say data is data, but data needs to be converted to information, information to intelligence. So there's somebody sitting there looking at this data and saying, this particular area in Ghana, I can see there's this many population, let's quickly push in a product of fertilizer that can do. Let's push in GMO, because they have a long-term strategy. Because once you start using GMO seeds, then you have to continue using the GMO chemicals. And then GMO also means that it also has a certain lifespan. Then you've got to change to something else because the soil cannot continue to take it. So it hurts me when things get done, and it hurts our own people. So I'm like, why are we not using? I mean, Ghana, for example, had the best minds on the continent. We've always looked at Ghanaians to know that. My God, it's not about eloquence, but the intelligence level. Why are we not challenging? Is the voices not being heard? You know, is our noise levels not sufficient? We are insecure as a people when it comes to food security. What are we doing about it? What can we do about it?
So, Fatima, in terms of food security, what must we do differently? I'll tell you why I'm concerned, because every indicator, everybody who watches can predict that should nothing happen, there will be a food crisis.
I think we already are in a food crisis.
Well, there we go.
I mean, it's a reality.
Right. So what should we do differently?
We need to start taking agriculture seriously. I mean, from the time I moved here to where we're at right now, Ghana has grown leaps and bounds. But I think we're becoming more of a jungle, concrete jungle, than we are becoming a greener environment. The biggest challenge first is to have the youth. You know, there's this thing about urban and rural. And one of the things that I say, that within the urban there's a rural, and within the rural there's an urban. I mean, think of a minister, for example. You know, he may have a house in the urban, 5-bedroom, 7-bedroom house. But right next to him, you're going to find somebody who's living like in a shanty, you know, iron corrugated sheets. So they coexist. Or you might find a kiosk where that same 7-bedroom house person who can actually afford to go to certain supermarkets is actually going to the kiosk to buy the nano milk, buy, you know, drinking chocolate or whatever. You go to the rural area where people are supposed to be living, you know, amidst poverty. You find another minister's house, 5-bedroom, but he's still surviving. He's got water, he's got electricity, he's got genset. So what's the difference between the two areas? So we're finding people shifting and migrating from the rural area to the urban because they think that the grass is greener at this side. I say the grass is greener wherever you carry your watering can, right? So what we need to do are two important things. First, the farmer generation we have in Ghana is a dying generation in terms of age, right? They have a wealth of knowledge. A farmer here, I keep saying it all the time, is able to put his finger in the air and he's going to be able to tell you which way the wind is coming from. Is it going to rain? He's able to put his finger in the soil and he's going to be able to tell you whether it's dry, whether it's nutrient dense or not. Who is downloading this information? Who is taking this information from this older generation to create it into something? Whereas then you have the youth who don't find agriculture sexy enough. They want a quick money. They're not people like you and I who have said, let's toil, let's work hard, let's work in a job, before we start doing something of our own. They want to make it quick. They want to be able to their success factor is, I want to be able to have a house, I want to have a car, I want to have this much dollars, I want to be able to dress well. And they want it in the shortest span of time. So the solution here is you have this generation that is dying with all this information, and then you have the youth who are tech savvy. They have a passion for anything that is digital. How can we get them to find agriculture sexy enough? Let's show them, give them the skills to understand that. Let's use the knowledge that you have of technology, download it from the older generation, and can you make it better? What is it that we can do back in the rural areas to now take that knowledge and drive it differently? It's not about concessions. I mean, already I keep saying that when government gives fertilizers, upfront to farmers, they get a bumper harvest, but then there's nobody to buy it. So why don't we do it the other way around and say the concession that we're giving you on the fertilizer, let's give it to you on the price at the end of the season. Let's drop the prices in such a way that everybody in Ghana can afford it. It's more about margin versus volume, and you play in the volume game.
Let's talk about the role of mentoring. How big is mentoring as a game changer in inspiring young people to?
It is crucial. I mean, that's what I'm here to do. The role that we have, I think this is the gift that has been put upon us to ensure that we share whatever we have, because we have experience. It comes in, and I don't belittle somebody who might be 19 or 25. They also have their sets of experiences. But it's important to understand that a journey is not just a matter of a few steps, it's 1,000 steps. So it should be incumbent upon all of us to be able to share whatever little that we know, whatever little bit of wisdom that we have. And if it can help somebody else. In Islam, we have one of the things that we say is called Sadaqah al-Jariyah, which means that when you leave this world, there's certain things. I mean, your payment, your books of accounts with this world has ended, but there's certain things that will continue to give you pointers after you're gone, and those things are impart of knowledge and education. Did you impart any knowledge of education that is also going to, because of that knowledge, somebody else is going to benefit? Because remember, it gets transferred by generations. Did you build a well and give water? Because every time that person drinks water, then they have life, and because of them having life, they're able to work and give somebody else. So there are various things, but one of them is actually knowledge. What knowledge are you giving?
One of our companies is called Legacy and Legacy, and that is the whole idea behind it, that you must leave a legacy immediately, but there must be something that should outlive you. And you are saying that should either be the knowledge you impart,
yes,
or the building.
It's like they say, the
wells.
tree, the seed that you plant, you don't know. It may be a shade that you will never sit under.
Growing up, I told myself that 100 years after I've gone, somebody must read something I've written and say, wow.
I keep saying 100 years from now, there'll be people living in our houses that we never knew, who are not even related to us.
Yeah.
If we get remembered, then that's going to be a big, big thing.
Let me sign off with your message to the young people that you've mentioned quite a few times in this conversation. And look in this camera, tell them, what would you like to tell them? Fatima, speaking to them heart to heart, soul to soul, and tell them what you want to tell them.
My message to the younger generation is, you've been given a gift. You have a gift of life. You have so many years ahead of you. I want you to go out there with no fear. I am fearless. I have done a lot of things in life without having to think about the consequences, and I've just done it, and so far I haven't had a reason to regret. A lot of times, the biggest challenge that comes for the youth, and especially people going into entrepreneurship or whatever else, is where do we get the funds, where do we get the money to do this, because that becomes the biggest challenge to be able to go forward. The first thing is count within your inner circle. The money is always within your inner circle before you go out, from that. So whether it's your family, your friends, but be clear about what it is you want to achieve. And the first thing that you must do is identify the problem, because everything that you do in life has to be a solution to a problem. So once you believe that you have the answer to that problem, then go in with conviction. And that is one thing that I take in my journey, is the conviction that I have to be able to say, I'm going to do this and go forward with it. But at the same time, morals and values are key. Success does not necessarily have to be in the tangibles, in wearing the branded items, driving the branded cars, because all that is just money that you're putting to waste when you could actually invest it into something better. So there will be a day when you can want to wear the Rolex, of whatever, to drive the Jaguars. For now, invest that money into things that are more for needs versus wants. Wants are about luxury. Needs are what is going to keep you going. So all I can say is go in there, give it your best shot. And remember, if you fail 7 times, you can still stand up 8. There is no right or wrong way to anything. Just go in and give it your best.
Fatima Alimohamed, CEO of African Brand Warrior, and the red hair, and the Kenyan descent. It's been nice talking with you, and I've learned so much from listening to you. You're a great storyteller. Have you thought about writing?
I have actually. I just recently wrote a book. It's co-authored with others, but I'm also writing one of my own right now. So I've done 2 so far.
You started by telling me you're not a dreamer. One thing I can tell you is that you love the life you live, and you are living the life you love.
I don't have a choice, do I? It's not like it's an option. So until it's not time for me to go, you just wake up and do what you need to do.
One thing he said in the course of the conversation that struck me as the state of many people is that you wake up going to do a job you don't love.
Yeah.
That was tight. That was tough.
And it is true.
It's many people's reality.
That is the reality for a lot of people. It's because they've been put in a situation where they've got to put food on the table. And we become a society where we try to pull each other down. I mean, I've been in situations where people have tried to take food off my plate. But at the end of the day, we have a God. I always believe that the people who are oppressed, and that's what we say in our faith, is that there is no veil between them and the Almighty. So everything that is given to you is your portion. It's destined for you. Nobody can come and take away from you. So just go in there, and that's why I said it's not about doing what you love, but loving what you do. Because once you start loving what you do, everything else just falls in place.
I love listening. I enjoy it. Thanks for making time for this conversation.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. So let's continue this conversation on our social media platforms. Which of the thoughts that Fatima shared resonated with you? Was it her conviction? Was it a clarion call for young people to go out there with their solution to the challenges they see around them? Was it the reminder that she's fearless? Which of the things she said resonated with you the most? Let's keep this conversation going on social media. And don't forget to find these thoughts liberally shared on our social media pages as well as in the graphic business. This has been Springboard, your virtual university, brought to you by the Springboard Ratio Foundation and proudly sponsored by MTN Pulse and the Enterprise Group. Our media partners, as always, the Multimedia Group and the graphic business. My name is Albert Okran. Saying a big thank you to you, Fatima Alimohamed, for joining us for this conversation. Let's do this again.
For sure. Anytime.
Absolutely.
I have an open mind for anything. They just come.
Absolutely. So till we come your way again next week, this is Albert saying God bless you, and God bless you.